Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Migrate Data from Netezza to the Microsoft Data Platform. We're going to give it about one more minute for everybody to join the call, and then we'll get started. Okay, thank you for joining our webinar today called Migrate Data from Netezza to the Microsoft Data Platform. I'm Carol, and I'm going to be the MC for today. If you could just switch to the next slide, I'll introduce our speakers today. Today's speakers will be Clive Behrman, Product Marketing Director at Attunity, Thiago Brook, Senior Solutions Engineer at Attunity, and Kuber Sharma, Product Marketing Lead for the Azure SQL Data Warehouse from Microsoft. Our presentation today will be recorded, and everybody will get a copy of the recording shortly after this presentation today. We'll be answering these questions. Why is real-time data important for driving business insights? How can you use change data capture, or CDC technology, to efficiently transfer data to the cloud and keep it updated? How can you build sophisticated analytic workflows quickly? Why is the Azure Data Platform the best choice for analytics? And finally, what is the ROI of migrating to the Azure cloud? Now, let me hand it over to our first speaker, Clive Behrman. Clive?
Thank you, Carol. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, wherever you are, wherever you may be in the world. As Carol said, my name is Clive Behrman, and let's get down to it. Before I talk about migrating to the fantastic Azure platform, I thought I'd talk a little bit for a couple of minutes about Microsoft and the Attunity partnership. We've been partners together now for well over 10 years. You know, the relationship goes way back, and I sort of fundamentally around these sort of use cases around cloud and database migration. So migrating any data that you have to the Microsoft data platform, sort of ingesting that data into Microsoft databases and enterprise data lakes, enterprise data warehouses from a massive range of your typical kind of enterprise data sources. And the other big thing is that continuous updates of data, keeping that fresh for those analytics and business use cases. And all of those sorts of things together make us the #1 sort of migration, and Carol already mentioned the acronym CDC technology. So, and we'll go into that in more depth shortly. You know, when you're migrating data from wherever to wherever, you know, we realize, I'm going to sound like an airline now, right? We realize you have a lot of options. There's ETL, you know, that extract, transform, and load. Primarily scripting, you know, with today's always-on data, ETL can your volume of data that you may want to migrate might not be in the sort of window for an ETL anymore, right? That you mean that your data is gone far beyond that hourly or 8-hourly batch update. Typically, ETL requires an agent, and there's a bunch of sort of things under the hood that when you migrate data, when you keep data updated, you want to change tables and schemas and things like that, and ETL doesn't really do any of that. So although it might be a good solution for a bunch of things, not always the right solution. The second solution sort of is EAI, or Enterprise Application Integration. That's API based. Typically it's done by developers. It can be time consuming. You sort of using small payloads or use for small payloads. So if you think about doing a query to something to say, hey, how many widgets do I have in my inventory system. You get a small payload of data back. And that can, in some instances, when you query source systems, a lot of times can impact that sort of system performance. So again, a good solution, but might not be the solution for you. And the third solution we have here is CDC. So it's non-invasive, so that unlike ETL, there's no agent. I'm not deploying anything to my target to my source systems. The data is always timely. The CDC stands for Change Data Capture, and I'm going to go into that concept next. There's often very great performance in data loads and data updates, and it's relatively easy to manage, and we'll see that shortly. So if you're unfamiliar with Change Data Capture, what does that look like? Well, my diagram here, I have a whole bunch of my end users on the left. I have a whole bunch of cloud and enterprise database systems. I have kind of like my log-based change data capture in the middle. And then my target systems, whether it's Kafka or files or other databases on, we'll talk about specifically Microsoft Data Solutions shortly. But my users are on the left, and my update systems, if you like, are on the right. Now, when my users interact, if you think about them interacting with, say, oh, they're just doing the same thing I did, right? Just talked about, which is let me update my inventory system that's in SAP. So they apply the sort of use the UI in SAP. SAP writes the change to the SAP log. CDC kind of notices that change and sort of feeds that automatically and propagates that change to the system on the right. So I mean, that's sort of it in a nutshell, really. And then, finally, that update with very low latency is accurate and it's up to date and is available for instant analytics. So again, I don't want to flog a dead horse here, but the CDC benefits are that it's natively log-based. There's no software agents. Schemas and data changes can get propagated automatically. There's essentially very little external administration. The data transfer is very high performance, and the target data, my data in my data lake or my database is always current. So now you have a lot of choices when it comes to CDC and ETL and API, but realistically, any data migration really needs to be sort of successful data migration, especially from an on-premise to a new technology like Azure, really needs to be as part of a whole process where we discover what data that we want to update, we assess the sort of impact of that, and I just put a few things here. The data migration assistant from Microsoft is a good tool for SQL Server if you want to convert the data. Again, the maybe from different data types and different data things, the data flow that we have with CDC will take care of some of that, but maybe you want an intermediary kind of conversion. There's a nice tool from Microsoft called the SQL Server Migration Assistant. That's very nice. And then you're kind of into the loop of migrating the data, taking applications off of line, remediating those applications. You're going to do some functional performance testing on how good that data test and how good that data transfer is, and then you're going to optimize your sort of data transfer for your particular environment. And then there's a bunch of tools I put there. And then you're going to sync the data, and you could use the database migration service, or in fact, we'll see in a moment, you could actually just do a whole bunch of these things in the Attunity solution specifically built for Microsoft. And then, of course, the final step is kind of like cutting over. So I'm going from my existing application that was maybe on-premise or in a different data source, and I'm going to migrate the data, and then I'm going to cut over and retire the application and move over to my new application on the cloud. So the sort of tool that I would I would suggest and I would promote, obviously, for me, is Attunity Replicate. It's optimized and secure, specifically to do those sorts of things. We've talked about performance. Look at the 10 billion rows per hour we've got from an Oracle Exadata, in this instance, another data warehouse, with Attunity Replicate into target data sources. And again, that's kind of extracts the data not in an ETL or batch mode, in a real-time mode. You can transfer from on-premises, you're going to transfer it to Azure, or you can ingest it into data warehouses like SQL Data Warehouse or Azure Data Warehouse 2. So again, here's a universal solution, if you like, for the data migration, what it looks like. Again, all of my data sources on the left, Attunity Replicate in the middle, and all of my Microsoft sources on the right. And lucky for you folks, there's a specific solution that is free to use and free to download for Microsoft customers, and that's the Attunity Replicate for Microsoft migrations. So again, we'll come back to this later, but you'll get a copy of these slides and you'll see the URLs, and you can go and try that out yourself. There's a lot of data sources, and I know we're specifically talking about Teradata today, but it's, if you have Teradata, it's likely that you have Oracle or SQL Server, DB2, maybe some open source, maybe SQL, MySQL, maybe you have some Hadoop, maybe some mainframe or SAP data. We have all of those sources are available into all of these Microsoft targets. So SQL Server, Azure Insight, Azure HD Insight, Azure SQL Warehouse, Azure Event Hub 2. And the typical use cases, things like SQL Server modernization. If I want to migrate from SQL Server to, in fact, between different SQL Server versions, and we can do that all in one step. Database migration. So you want to go from Oracle to Sybase or DB2 to the SQL Server. Specifically, and we'll see a great demo today, moving from data warehouses and doing data warehouse, not only migration, but modernization. So from things like Teradata and Netezza, and even to more modern things, right, from maybe Amazon Redshift. Maybe you're creating a data lake. So you want to create some populate and keep updated all of the data that's in all that legacy data, putting it into your Azure data lake. And maybe you're re-architecting your traditional infrastructure to be more real-time. So you're using an event hub for stream analytics. And of course, we can help you populate and put data into streams. So lots of use cases that we've seen a lot of our customers doing, especially as it relates going from a particular type of data source to the Microsoft data platform. And I think with that, I'm going to sort of hand it over to Kuber to talk about specifically this sort of instance from a legacy system to Azure SQL Data Warehouse.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you, Clive. I hope you guys can hear me. Thanks again for joining.
Yes,
and thanks everyone on the webinar today for joining us. It's really an exciting time because cloud is making data and analytics cloud is democratizing data and analytics for everyone. And a lot of our customers who have large legacy implementation of appliances, data warehouse appliances like Netezza, Exadata, Greenplum, or Teradata have been coming to us looking at new opportunities, new services in the cloud, which will help them not just improve their data warehouse performance, but at the same time lowering the cost. And Attunity gives this incredible set of tooling to our customers, which really simplify this migration to the cloud. Most of our customers who are coming from Netezza and Teradata, when they are looking to move to the cloud, one of their key priorities is to maintain the same level of performance. And we at Microsoft recommend that the best cloud-based data warehousing for almost all customers is Azure SQL Data Warehouse. It's built for the cloud MPP architecture service, which offers a fast, flexible, and secure hub for analytics. I'll just take a few minutes to talk about how we differentiate ourselves from the key competitors and why we believe we solve the most pertinent analytics problems. Number one thing is performance. The service, Azure SQL Data Warehouse, was built for only two things: really fast query performance and really high query concurrency. And in the last 6 months or so, since the release of SQL Data Warehouse Gen 2, multiple industry benchmarks have recognized us as the performance leader. We've seen GigaOM do a TPCH benchmark. We have seen Fivetran do a TPC-DS benchmark. And in all of these benchmarks, Azure SQL Data Warehouse has come as top compared to Amazon Redshift or Google BigQuery. But performance is one thing, and performance is nothing if that performance is not accessible across your organization. And that's why Azure SQL Data Warehouse has the highest query concurrency for any data warehouse service. We can support as many as 128 parallel customers at any given time. And the query limitation there is 500 queries. And this is significantly higher compared to any other competitor that we've seen in the cloud today. And part of this is making this accessible. The democratization comes because we give a very flexible business model to our customers. By breaking up compute and storage, we give our customers a super elastic service, which can be scaled on the fly. You can go from 16 cores to 3,000 cores in literally minutes, and then easily come back as well. This also gives our customers the ability to resume or pause when their service is not being used, significantly lowering the costs. Further, Azure SQL Data Warehouse also wants to make sure our customers' data stays where the customers are. And this is the world's most widely available data warehouse service. Today, the service is available in 44 different Azure regions. And that's more regions than all the other cloud data warehouse services combined. It also shows the amount of investment and the intent that Microsoft has put behind this service. And the final part of this story is making truly cloud scale analytics easy and accessible for our customers. So this means working with our partner ecosystem, partners such as Attunity, to make sure our customers can easily get started with a really powerful solution. No matter what your business intelligence or dashboard of choices, no matter where you want to come from, data integration perspective, we have tight integration with all the leading players. Attunity especially has built a great set of tooling to help our customers move from different kinds of on-premises or even cloud-based services, including Netezza and Teradata, to Azure SQL Data Warehouse. Now let's talk about a recent customer example. Clive, if you can go to a next slide, please. Anheuser-Busch, and I really love talking about this particular customer. I was engaged with them for a long time, and it was a long process working with Anheuser-Busch, but a successful one. As you might know about Anheuser-Busch InBev, it's the largest beer company in the world. Approximately every fourth beer bottle or can in the world is manufactured by them. So if you do enjoy beer, you must have had some form factor an Anheuser-Busch beer. And that has been made possible by Azure SQL Data Warehouse. 3 years back, when Anheuser-Busch InBev came to us, they were struggling with siloed data across their organization. And that's a very common story that we've heard across different organizations. As companies acquire each other, as different parts of the businesses have their own IT budgets, there's very disparate sources of data and not a canonical enterprise DW. And ABI struggled with the same problem. And what this led to was there was no single unique view of how the company was doing, what's going on within the organization. With Microsoft, Anheuser-Busch was able to build one single unique platform for all their data. They bring together all their customer data, marketing data, sales data, HR data, customer service data, and even finance data into one enterprise data warehouse and give access to different functional users as required. They were able to move from traditional on-prem platforms such as Teradata, such as Oracle, as well as Microsoft's own SQL Server into one single global analytics platform running on top of Azure SQL Data Warehouse. It's definitely a exabyte scale data lake that they were able to build. And what they saw was not just performance improvement. They were able to significantly decrease their costs by having fewer people run their infrastructure, but as well as simplifying and removing a lot of duplicative effort. And this is a common use case of customers coming with complex data estates and simplify them into one Microsoft platform. Can we have the next slide, please, Clive? And that's the message that I want to share with you guys. Attunity gives a great pathway, a great journey to come to Azure. And what Azure SQL Data Warehouse offers is a fast, flexible, and a super secure platform for all your data at any scale, for all your analytics or data warehousing requirements. I'll now bring back Attunity team to do a quick demo of how we can do this. Thank you, Clive.
Thanks, Kuber. That was great. I also, you sort of said bringing your data to sort of the Azure SQL platform. I thought I'd give a sort of example architecture as well, not that peeled a bit more down on the sort of types of things that folks might deploy. So, here's an interesting example, right? We have a SQL server in Boston, we have Netezza in San Francisco, we have MySQL and DB2 in Alaska here. Change data capture, when all of those applications change, is going to send the data to the replication engine and Attunity replicate. And in this particular example, you're kind of interfacing everything to Event Hub, and Event Hub from there uses sort of Azure Data Factory to stick it into blob storage and stick it into Azure SQL Data 2 in sort of a data pipeline. So, we're in this instance, a whole bunch of Microsoft products and Attunity products all working together to get those real-time BI and analytics to the end user. So with that, we're going to come on, as we said, come on to our demo. It's going to be Tiago's going to do a great job. Mainly three things, right? He's going to define a data source, which in our instance will be Netezza. We're going to define the data target, which is going to be SQL Data Warehouse. He's going to show you how to create replication tasks to do an initial load and all that sort of stuff, and how that, when the data changes, will be fed through to the SQL Data Warehouse and kept up to date for those analytics use cases. So with that, I'm going to change presenter. Tiago, if you're there, I'm going to hand you the control and see such a great demo.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Clive. I'm here. I just need, okay, now I can see that you gave me the presenter. Right, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen here. I just want to make sure you guys are able to see.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. So this is going to be a brief demo just to show how Replicate works and how easy actually is to set up a task where we're going to define here the source, define the target, and send some data there. Basically, one thing that I want to talk before I get into the demo itself is the Replicate is a solution, is a software that you install in your own environment. There's no callback, and you can even be in a completely isolated network. This can be in a physical machine, virtual machine. It doesn't matter for Replicate in this case. So Replicate is the middleman. The first thing that we have to do when we connect to Replicate is we have to establish the connection between Replicate and my source database, where I'm going to pull the data from, and Replicate and my target database, where the data is going to. And I do that by going to the Manage Endpoint Connections. So when I click on Manage Endpoint Connections here, I have the option to add a new endpoint. This is quite simple. I would give a name for this endpoint, specify what is going to be the role, if it's going to be source and target, and then I click on the drop-down and select whatever database I'm connecting to. In this case, is my source. So I have many database types. For instance, I can connect to a DB2 mainframe, DB2 LUW, SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, where I want to pull the data from, even a SAP application, SAP HANA, etc. Then I can connect, specify the same thing to the target. I'm going to use the same one here as this example. I already have my endpoints created, so I'm not going to recreate them. But at this point, what I can do is, for instance, I select the target, click on the drop down, select between multiple database. And in this particular case, what we're going to use is we're going to use the Microsoft Azure Data Warehouse. But as you can see, we have many other Azure endpoints here. We have the ADLS, we have the MySQL, Postgres, Event Hubs, HT, Insight, the SQL database. So I'm going to use the one that I have already created so you can see what information we pass here. The first part is the Azure SQL Data Warehouse. So I pass the server name, port, username, password, and then I can click on Browse, select what it's going to be my database. The next part here is regarding the blob storage. So the way that we're going to send this data is we're going to connect to the SQL Data Warehouse as a ODBC connection. We're going to create the metadata there. And then all of the data, the bulk of the data, it's going to be sent to the blob storage. Once the data is in the blob storage, and this is going to be a temporary storage only, so you don't have to worry about your blob storage growing exponentially, we're going to issue a command to copy the data from the blob storage into the SQL Data Warehouse. And don't think that we're going to send all of the data and then copy it. This is a process that you can specify, okay, every 1 gig of data that I send, I'm going to issue a copy command. And this is going to be on the data that is currently on my source database and also the ongoing changes that I have. So in this particular case, I'm going to use an example going from a Netezza to a data warehouse. So the next step is to create a test. This is actually pretty simple. I'm going to call this Netezza to Azure SQL Data Warehouse. I'm going to use the task options here with the full load and apply change. So whatever change I get on the source, I'm going to replicate this to the target. And once I click OK, this is literally drag and drop. It could not be easier than that. So I'm going to select here my Netezza source, drag and drop. I'm going to select my Azure SQL Data Warehouse, drag and drop. Now I define my source, define my target. I'm going to go to the table selection. So in this particular case, I'm going to select a couple tables here just to demonstrate some data going to the destinations. So I'm going to select the test tab and the test tab 2. One is completely empty. The other one has a couple records only, but then I'm going to start changing. And keep in mind, there's no limitation in the Attunity to replicate on the amount of data you want to send. I'm just sending a very small quantity here, so the demo doesn't take too long. I'm going to click OK. And now I have defined my source, my target, and my table. So I have the task pretty much ready. A couple other things that I want to mention here is you can apply global transformations and apply transformations directly on the table itself. So global transformation, perhaps you want to change the schema name, perhaps you want to change or add a column to all of the tables. And on the table itself, you may want to remove a column or you want to filter some of the data. So you can all do this directly on the interface. And it's actually very simple. So if I go to one of the tables here, I want to show you the transformation that you can say, you know what, I don't want to replicate this particular column here, so I can just click on the left arrow and that's it. It's not part of the output anymore. Filter, parallel load, all of that. Again, very, very simple. I cancel this. I don't want to do any change, so we're still going to have the 3 columns there. And at this point, I just have to click on run and see the task running. Before I do that, I just want to show that this is my destination. So I'm using this one for my source and this one for my destination. As you can see, I'm going to even do a refresh here. I have no tables there. Let me just reconnect there and connect again. So we have this all updated. So you can see that we have no tables in that particular schema, which is the admin schema. So once we start sending the data there, we're going to create the table and we're going to start sending everything to the destination. So while disconnect, I'm going to go back to my replicate, and I'm going to start the replication right now. So I'm going to click on run. And once I click on run, it's going to take from the starting task, and it's going to go from design to the monitor. And the first thing that we'll see, it's actually going to be sending this data in the full load, which is the first part of the transfer. So now we are directly on the full load. We have the data going there to the destination. Couple other things that I want to show here, just to give you more information about that, is once we start performing some changes, we're going to see the apply changes here. So I can start applying some changes to the destination and see that this is going to be sent to the final destination. So a couple other things that I want to mention that I think is important here is we have all of this set up with notifications, so you can send notifications to an email, you can send notifications to an event viewer, you can also control which users can access the interface, what users in your domain can change the tasks, can add different tasks, or can modify content. So you have all of this built in already. And the last thing is, even though this task is set to start and run continuously, you can also have this created on a schedule base. So for example, if you have a maintenance window every Saturday at 2 o'clock in the morning, for example, you can have replicate stopping the task, wait for the maintenance window, and then start the task 2-3 hours later, depending on how you have this set up. So this is what I wanted to show. I'm going to stop sharing the application right now, and I'm going to switch back to Clive. I think, Clive, you are the one that is taking from here, correctly?
I am, Tiago, thanks. I have a quick question though. So when you did run task, that's for an initial load, right? So
that is correct, yes.
So that's when I'm, say, doing my initial migration. Hopefully you can see my screen now. Is that, you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Perfect. So as I was saying, when you're doing the migration, you might want to load a whole bunch of data first before the sort of change data capture takes effect, right? So what you were showing there when you said run task was an initial sort of data migration.
Yes.
Perfect. And then
from that point on, it's going to go into the apply changes, which is capturing the change from the source and applying that into the destination.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, there we go. We had a quick demonstration. So thanks, Tiago. Great demo.
Thank you.
So the good news for all you folks out there is there's a specific version of the software just tailored for you guys that you can download and try it for free if you want to, again, try some of the data sources on the left to migrate to your SQL data warehouse on the right. You saw how easy it was for Tiago to use point and click and select your tables and you create your task and you're pretty much done. Again, it's attunity.com/Microsoft migrations, and I think and then not only that, there's the free download. There's a community there. You're free to ask questions and folks will help you out. The email alias there. And I think at this point, I'm going to hand to Carol to wrap up. So thanks, everyone, again.
Yeah, thank you, guys. We do have a couple of questions today. Let me just ask them of all of you.
Sure.
One question here. Can you use Attunity Replicate for a migration to SQL Server to Azure SQL Managed Instance?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the answer is yes, is the answer. I've never done it personally. I think Tiago would have done it. But
Clive, can you, I'm sorry, I didn't get the entire question, so I didn't hear the entire question. Can you repeat that, please?
I'll repeat that for you. Can you use Attunity Replicate for a migration to SQL Server to Azure SQL Managed Instance?
To the Azure SQL managed instance, you're talking about the Azure SQL as a service.
That's correct.
Yes. You can manage. You can send the data there. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question, from the same source. Can you run Attunity Replicate in an Azure VM without doing a cutover? The goal here is to always have a copy of the on-premise database in Azure.
Well, I would delegate to Tiago again there.
If we can, I'm sorry, for some reason it was cutting for me here. Carol, can you repeat that for me, please? If you can send it, send, and then I heard cut over, and then I didn't hear much after that. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Can you run Attunity Replicate in an Azure VM without doing a cutover? The goal here is to always have a copy of the on-premise database into Azure.
Yes, you can send you can do the replication continuously there, so would not have a cut over. So you can have the Attunity Replicate running either on-prem or running in a VM in your Azure environment, and connecting this directly to your source database. As soon as something is created on your source database, it's captured and replicated constantly. So it's a very near real-time situation here.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, we have a question that involves Cloudera. Can you perform replication from Netezza to Cloudera on the cloud?
We do have support for Hadoop. So the way that we connect to Hadoop environments, or we connect to the using the HDFS to send the data. So Web HDFS, HTTPFS, NFS. And this is to send the data. To create the metadata, we connect directly to Hive using the ODBC client for that. So if you have those two systems there, you would be able to connect, as long as you have, like I said, Hive and HDFS running for us to send the data.
And since we're on a Microsoft partner webinar, it would be remiss for us to say, you could also do that at HD Insight too, right? So,
that is correct, yes. With HD Insight is a little bit different, because we actually have an endpoint that is the HD Insight, because you can save the data with the HD Insight in the blob storage, or you can save the data in HD Insight into the ADOLS. So you have those two options.
Oh, I learned something myself today. Thanks very much. That's good to know.
Well, I want to say thank you to all of our speakers today. Thank you, Clive. Thank you, Kuber. Thank you, Tiago.
Thank you very much.
We're through all of our questions for the day, so I think we're going to make this a wrap, and everyone will get this recording in their mailbox very soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.